Got to cover the Falcons here and the Falcons-Lions game because it was an interesting game. I guess I will start in kind of the obvious spot. It didn't necessarily end how anybody wanted it to, of course, but I thought it was a class act, especially from the Falcons' standpoint. We all know that Raheem Morris is a class act, and he is a man of character, and he showed that the way that they ended the game. I talked to Justin Rogers, who covers the Lions beat here, and he was talking about how he was happy with how they handled it, but more kind of looking at the NFL saying, hey, why did it take all of that for you guys to shut this game down? Why did it take the snap and holding and then going in the circle? That was a great moment and an iconic moment that I think will be shown a lot as the season goes on, but it also will remind people, hey, yeah, this was when the players had to kind of take this into their own hands. And you see, because I think the main image that will be remembered from that is Ukwu from the Lions and Nathan Carter, who was involved in the play, standing next to each other and holding hands. I think that was the key part because obviously the Lions were in half the circle and the Falcons were in half the circle, and that'll be kind of an iconic picture. But it also reminds us, hey, the NFL still hadn't shut it down by that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like a picture that the Players Union and Association should be using like for a lot of their feature points from here on out when it comes to player safety, because like I understand football's a game of collisions. I know people like to call it a contact sport, but it's more than that. And I understand that injuries happen, but when things like that occur, especially in preseason games, it should just go ahead and call it. Like there shouldn't be any consideration that the game's still going on. And it was really interesting hearing the announcers of that game sitting there talking about, well, what's going on? Like, why is nothing happening? And I kind of think that takes away from a lot of it. Again, it almost dehumanizes the players. And again, because like when it happened, I just kind of like turned it off for a little bit during that whole ambulance on the field thing, because it's not something you ever really want to watch. And so I went back and rewatched it the next day after, and I believe it was the Falcons broadcast.
Okay.
But it was just really interesting.
Because we had Jason Benetti and TJ Lang do it here locally. Benetti is the regular Tigers broadcaster, so we hear a lot of him. And because he does Tigers games, he does pretty much every sport. I've seen him do basketball, football, baseball. He, I thought, did a good job. We'll put that kind of in asterisks because it's a very tough moment, like you said, but he rides the waves of baseball very well. He gets kind of goofy as the game gets kind of out of hand because he knows he can mess around a little bit. He gets serious when the game is close, but I thought he did a good job of kind of summarizing and meeting the moment. But it is a tough moment to meet because it was a tough thing to watch happen from both sides. And then you also feel for those other guys because they're trying to get out there and impress, and now they've lost their momentum, and so hopefully both teams can kind of recover and put out a nice game here for the next game. But I thought there were a lot of different players that stuck out to me in Atlanta, but I'm curious who you kind of thought like basically improved their position in Atlanta and were guys that you kind of had your eyes on from the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to not go ahead and kind of point directly to the obvious one for me is DeMarco Hellams. Missed all of last season with an injury, and this season was kind of coming back in fighting for like the fourth pole safety because we just doubled up on safeties in the draft with Billy Bowman and Xavier Watts. So a lot of people were sitting there kind of wondering, like, where does DeMarco Hellams fit into this? And I think he did an incredible job of just playing fast, playing tough, and just laying the hit. Because there's the whole shot down the sideline that he just came flying across, and he hit y'all's receiver. I forgot who it was, but hit him on the third and long play, and ended up making y'all punt. And like that play kind of stood out. And then like that's just like the guy that I think was the biggest winner from all this, at least on our end.
Interesting. Yeah, it's fun to watch the preseason piece, I feel like, because there's a lot of these battles. I know some people don't care as much, but there's a lot of these battles, and we saw it here in Detroit. I think we know better than most how this can affect the team, because they use the back end of that 53-man roster and more, their entire practice squad, other teams' practice squads, with all of the injuries they had last year. So I feel like there's a lot to be decided here. But we didn't get a chance to preview the game with you, so I want to kind of go back to that a little bit on the Falcons side, because I do feel like, and obviously the game itself didn't really affect my view of the Falcons overall, but I feel like this is a team on the rise. I don't think anybody has a close eye on them, but in the division that they're in, I think they have a chance to kind of take things by storm. They were close last year. If Penix had played the whole year, I think they would have gotten to the postseason. That's hard to know, but now you've got the best 1-2 combo as far as the backup, if he does stay in Kirk Cousins, and you've got him helping Penix out. Penix is looking very good, and they've got a lot of weapons, so you've got to be feeling good about the upcoming season here.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot to like. I'm really thankful. Like, obviously, Kirk Cousins is a bit of a debacle right now with the contract situation, how that impacts the salary cap, because you can only do so much with that from a team building perspective. But in terms of just having a leader in the room, like it's a really good thing to have, and a really cool thing to have, where it's, if anything were to happen to Penix, we at least know, okay, Kurt can step up and give us some level of good play at the QB position. So it's something that's very, very awesome to have, and very fortunate.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he actually stays on the team as the year progresses here. I think when we talked to Savion, he wasn't even sure that he would be on the roster as far as week 1 goes, but we'll see how all that progresses here. But he is a valuable piece, but like you said, he might be a valuable piece if he is able to be traded to a team that maybe loses a quarterback or wants to have one bring them over the hump and thinks Cousins is the one to do that. That wouldn't be bad, and then you guys clear the books, because I think Penix is the future as long as he stays healthy, obviously.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, Penix has shown a lot of good promise. I think there's definitely some questions to his game, but that's as expected with a young QB. But I think the upside's there. I think arm talent-wise, he has the potential to be one of the best just pure arm talents in the league. And things like that just have to get you excited as a fan.
Well, he's got a ton of weapons too, because that running back combination. I was talking with a buddy about Bijan Robinson today, and obviously he gets a lot of the headlines, and he's one that everybody needs to be on the lookout for, just like Jahmyr Gibbs, who was taken the same year here with the Lions. But just like Jahmyr Gibbs here in town, that he's got David Montgomery, Tyler Algier is no joke either. That's a great combination, and that's going to be able to keep Robinson fresh down the stretch, which I think is going to be key. Oh,
without a doubt. Tyler Algier is probably one of the more underrated second backs in the league, because I feel like he doesn't get enough love because Bijan's there. I remember when we were actually drafting Bijan, I kind of was out on him, like, for us, because I was like, Tyler Algier's a good back, and I'll be honest, I really wanted Jalen Carter at the time, so I was kind of pushing that train a little bit on Twitter. But since we've gotten Bijan, it's been fun. Like, he's a versatile weapon. He's very, very good at what we do on offense with the outside zone game that we have. The vision, explosiveness that he carries it's awesome. Him and Gibbs are going to be fun to watch, kind of like duke it out for best back in the league in a couple of years. I agree, and I think this situation helps them out a lot, because Montgomery, just like Algier, I think Montgomery is an underrated back. I think he's gotten more of his due in the Lions system over the last year or two, but he is an underrated back as far as his style. He eats a lot of yards and carries and keeps Gibbs healthy. I think they're going to play them more at the same time. I don't know if they're looking at that in Atlanta, because they've got a lot of other weapons in Atlanta. They've got London, who's poised for a big year, and I got to think this is maybe the year that Pitts kind of breaks out, because I feel like that's a perfect fit with Penix. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I think Pitts can. There's a good article that I read today from Ben Glassmeyer over at, Wide Left, it's a Substack over there with some up and coming writers, which is really good. And Ben talked about like why Kyle Pitts isn't good. It was actually just like a really interesting perspective that he has from somebody not as a Falcons fan. But I think this is going to be the year that it finally happens. If it were to, this is going to be the year. But I have no idea at this point anymore.
It just seems like a good fit with Penix overall. But coming back here with Hunter Thompson, talking about the Falcons-Lions game here and the Falcons' upcoming season. I'm curious, especially since you're a draft guy, because I know Carter was one of the names that was thrown about here. I think he was one of the guys that the Lions had interest in, but with the off-the-field issues, I'm kind of curious. I always like kind of the multiverse view of things and the alternate timelines that you can kind of go down. Obviously, it's hard to know what would happen. The butterfly effect is all in there, but you have the fact that he went to the Eagles. He's obviously played very well, but in a lot of ways, the Eagles were the perfect situation for him because they're like Georgia, the pro version. And so he had a lot of buddies there. He was able to assimilate into the clubhouse well. So I'm curious if you would still like him, because he'd be a good trendsetter in the middle of that defense, but it's also hard to get rid of Bijan at this point because he's looked very good.
Yeah, in terms of a pure talent perspective, I find it really, really hard to sit here and still pass up on Jalen Carter. That year, he was one of my top-ranked players in the class. I think I had him at like third overall that year. And he, as much as I wanted him in Atlanta, it's very much a good thing that he probably didn't. I think him going to Philly was probably the best-case scenario for him at the time. But, I mean, you have the veteran locker room, you have talent, you have guys from Georgia there. There's a level of accountability that is there. I think had he ended up in Atlanta, it would have been a little bit different of a story. But in terms of talent perspective, he's really hard to not like. I know you guys were linked with him for a little bit too, and I think you guys would have actually been a great landing spot for him as well. You guys have a really good culture there in Detroit. Dan Campbell is incredible as a coach and getting the most out of his players, and I just think it would have been a good spot for him as well.
I agree. I think they got a curve thrown at him because I think they were actually looking at Witherspoon there. And then when he got taken a pick ahead, that kind of threw things into disarray. But then it ended up working out. I mean, you can't, kind of like Bijan for you guys, you can't really beat the trade back that they got, the multiple pieces that they got from that trade, including Gibbs, and then they were able to pick up both, not from the trade, but both Laporta and Branch in the second round. And I just think that haul is going to form that team for years. And that was the last part of the Stafford trade too. So that was kind of interesting from a Lions perspective. But one of the reasons we bring on folks that study the other teams is I want to get your take, especially being a draft guy. There's probably some guys from this draft that you're interested in. I'm curious who stuck out to you. I'm thinking maybe there's one name in there that was in this last Lions draft. Who stuck out to you on the Lions side and kind of what you thought of that Lions team seeing them for the first time?
I mean, it's not necessarily like from this game alone. The way TeSlaa has been playing for y'all throughout this, like everything I've been hearing about through camp and everything has just been a little bit like, it's been impressive. He's a guy that I wasn't as high on, but then he's just come in and he's done good for y'all from what I've been hearing and reading up on in camp. Honestly, though, the biggest takeaway for me during the game was the backup QB situation. I was really hoping Hendon Hooker was going to kind of step up and kind of show why you guys nabbed him in the third a couple of years back and at least start to develop into a true QB2. And I'm just not sure if that's where it's at yet.
That is going to be an interesting battle here. I think we're all kind of waiting for Hooker to take that mantle. He's had some injury issues. He's trying to assimilate into the offense. And obviously he's got to, I think, kind of learn to go through the progressions a little bit more. They brought that up during the game on the Lions broadcast, but that's one thing that I think they're going to value from him. It's nice that he's able to run. It's nice that he's more athletic than the other quarterbacks on the roster, but I think that's more of a last case scenario rather than a go-to option. I think he goes to his feet a little too quickly. That's something I see here with the local Michigan State quarterback, Aiden Childs. I'm thinking they're going to have him more in the pocket this year, which is, I think, what they'll try to do with Hooker, especially because he has had some injury issues. I still can't believe he came back after that shot that he took in the first week. He took a huge shot to the back of his head, and he was apparently okay for this week. But yeah, Allen had a great game, and he was a good fit in the offense there. So it'll be an interesting battle to watch. But I want to talk about TeSlaa a little bit, especially since you're a draft evaluator and you look at these different things. TeSlaa is interesting to me. I admittedly don't really look at the draft and the talent until they kind of get to a certain level, but I'm kind of curious. I know this is easy to say now that he's popping at camp. I actually had an interview with him at the station here before he got drafted, and I did tell him, like, hey, you profile perfectly as a Lions receiver. You've got the size. This was just after the combine, so he had put all those measurables on tape. I'm just surprised with all the data how people kind of missed this. I'm not saying that from like a draft evaluator standpoint, but the idea that he did have that size speed combo, but was it more a factor of like, okay, he just wasn't utilized correctly at Arkansas because obviously they're a run heavy team and it's harder to see those things if he's not really getting the ball. And now he's in an offense where he likes to block and do those things. So he's showing a willingness for that. It's just interesting that he was kind of seemingly undervalued because with what they gave up for him and then picking him up in the third round, you would have thought this was a huge reach, but now it's looking less like one here.
Yeah. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, him being at Arkansas is actually more of a reason why he fits y'all so well with how run heavy they were. And it kind of adds a grittiness to him as a blocker that you guys definitely want to have, like with a Dan Campbell led team. And I plan on going back and rewatching him just to kind of like see what I missed on him with. I think that's something that a lot of people should do is kind of go back on guys that you miss on and be like, okay, what did I see? Where did I miss? What can I learn from this? And I think he's going to be a perfect case study for guys that want to go back and do that.
I agree with you. I because I look at him and I'm obviously seeing him late in the process, but as I was watching more tape, seeing the combine, talking to him, I thought, wait, I'm not really seeing a lot of negatives to this guy's game. I know they had him in the slot a little bit more, and that was part of the issue. But again, that was more of a scheme fit thing. I didn't think that was necessarily a lack of ability to do it. And he seems like a guy that's eager to learn. I can see why he, as somebody that's interviewed a few people in this draft process, you can kind of see how guys like him rise up because that is a big part of it. I know a lot was made out of him wearing the Lions jersey into the interview and stuff, and that was a cool effect. I think it actually probably put Holmes a little bit on watch. I don't think Holmes necessarily liked that right from the beginning, and he thought it was a little bit attention grabbing. That's the feeling I get from some of the press conferences that he's had. But it was very pure. You can tell from when I interviewed him and from the consequent interviews that a lot of the beat writers doing that he's in this. He's not acting like a Lions fan. He's not putting on an act. This is just him, and he's being him, and the authenticity is prevailing here.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like, I think that's something that you can't really like take away. If someone's like a genuine fan, authentic about and passionate about the team, it's something that just adds to them. They play with a little bit more heart. They play a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder. I know our GM, Terry Fontenot, he was talking a couple of years ago about how they intentionally target guys, like not intentionally, but they always make an extra note of like when a guy's from Georgia, they throw like a peach on their draft board or something like that. And I think it's a cool feature because you'll see that a lot with our late round guys where a lot of them are from the state. Some of them played at Georgia. So it's cool. I think things like layers like that are things that just add to locker room culture.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by
Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Calder Financial, Grand Management Group, Encore Business Group, and Rydan Investments.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.